always have a very good story if you're going for an interview, why you want to work for that organization. What are you looking for? What are the career paths? How long do you see yourself? So one of the most challenging requests or questions that I get is, how do I prepare for an interview? And sometime last week, I had a student who was having an interview with AWS, and they approached me to help them practice. So we did a mock interview where I asked them questions. They gave me answers. I gave them feedback in areas to go and improve on. And it dawned upon me that it'd be good if I could do such a video. Now, unfortunately, I don't have anyone that I can ask questions and get them giving an answer. So I'm going to role play, and I'm going to take the role of the person interviewing and the person who's being interviewed. And I want you to take away 3 things from this video. Number 1, what questions are being asked in the industry? Because I took the questions that he was asked in his interview. Those are the questions that I'm going to be answering. And the second part is, how am I answering questions? Am I answering them in a positive way, in a negative way? So learn what you should do and what you should not do. And the third takeaway from this video is, at the end, I'm going to summarize how I performed in the interview and what were the expectations of the person who was interviewing, or what answers were they expecting from me on the questions that they were asking. So I'm going to do that summary, and I trust by the end you will find value in the video. Because I'm doing this for the first time, I'm going to need your feedback. If you have found value in this video, please let me know in the comment section. Just leave a like, leave a comment on the value that you got from this video, how it helped you. That will go a long way, in giving me feedback on the value that this kind of video is making to the people in the community. So I'm just going to ask you for your feedback. So this interview was with AWS, or Amazon Web Services, and my student was interviewing for a network technician position. So in this section of the interview, I'm going to be taking the role of the interviewer. So when you see me wearing this shirt, I'm the interviewer. When you see me wearing something else, I'm the person who's being interviewed. All right, so that is clear. Hi, Tinei. Thank you for applying for the role of network technician with Amazon Web Services. And in this interview, please don't hesitate to stop me if you have any questions. I want to make sure that you're comfortable and everything is clear, and I do not go down a road where you might be wondering, what am I talking about? So I'm going to start by explaining more about the role and the position and what we do at AWS. And then I'm going to give you the job description, what are the key responsibilities. And then after that, we are going to go into our interview. As you know, AWS is a world leader in cloud services. We operate large-scale and high-density data centers across the globe. We are expanding our technician teams within the Europe, Middle East, and African regions. As you are aware, this is an entry-level position, and it is a unique opportunity to work in some of the most innovative and fast-paced data centers in the world. The ideal candidate that we're looking for is someone who's going to be a self-starter, someone who's highly motivated, and someone who's got a willingness to learn and upskill. What are some of the responsibilities that you're going to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis? First, you're going to need to adhere to security and safety best practices in the data center. You're going to install and test copper and fiber cabling. You're going to build and troubleshoot network devices. You're going to be creating and attaching labels and barcodes. You will need to adhere to a defined escalation process and standard operating procedures. All right, so that's more about the job. Let's start our interview. So my first question is, tell me about yourself. I recently completed my CompTIA Network Plus certification. I started by studying A+, and I worked as a PC technician for a small IT shop. And as I gained more experience, the owner wanted me to venture into networking. So he took me for a course to do CompTIA Network Plus, and I completed that 6 months ago. And for the last 6 months, I've been getting responsibilities that are network oriented and installing networks for the small businesses that our company supports. Now I'm just going to go through a few technical questions. What is dark fiber? I can't fully define, dark fiber by its term, but I can give you an example of what dark fiber is. So for organizations that want to link up two metropolitan areas, as an example, one is in the city, one is in the industrial area, and they're looking for a layer 2 link that can bring those two locations together. They can go to a service provider and lease or get the services of dark fiber. So this is basically fiber that is not provisioned, that is raw or naked, if I probably put it in that context, that allows a customer to be able to connect two locations. So that's my understanding of dark fiber. You have two routers, and the two routers are connected physically, but they're not communicating at the moment. What could be the issue? All right, so if I get your question right, we're assuming that the physical link of the two routers is connected and working correctly. Is that a fair assumption? Okay, so if the physical connectivity is good and there's no question about it, the one thing that could probably be causing the two routers not to talk to each other is the fact that the interfaces are shut down. On a Cisco router, the interfaces are shut down by default. So the physical cabling might be connected, but if the port is still shut down, the link won't come up. So that is probably one of the primary reasons why the two routers have physical connectivity, but the link is not coming up. What is routing and what is switching, and what is the difference between the two? Hey friends, if you are enjoying this video and you are feeling that you are confident enough, you want to try your skills for a mock interview, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Send me an email. My email address is tinei@thenetworkhustle.com, tinei@thenetworkhustle.com. I will leave my email address in the comment section. Send me an email and we'll schedule a Zoom meeting, and I will record that interview and I'll share it on the channel so that it can be of benefit to other people. I'll give you feedback on your performance and we can all learn in that whole process. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Just send me an email. My email address is in the show notes. The best way I can explain routing and switching, I'm probably going to break it down from an OSI layer perspective. Routers operate on the layer 3 of the OSI, and they deal with IP addressing as their addressing mechanism to be able to communicate with other routers across the network. Switching, on the other hand, operates at layer 2, and it focuses on MAC addresses as its addressing mechanism. So routing, layer 3, IP addressing, switching, layer 2, MAC addresses. That's the best way that I can use to differentiate routing and switching. I'm sure at some point in your studies you covered the OSI model. Can you explain to me the first 3 layers of the OSI? I'm probably going to take it from the top coming down. So on layer 3, you've got routing, which focuses on IP addressing as the addressing mechanism. The devices that you're going to find on the layer 3 of the OSI are routers, which are also layer 3 devices. The 6th layer, if you are coming from the top going down, is layer 2. This is where you find switches, because switches are layer 2 devices. They use MAC addresses as their addressing mechanism, and their primary role is to connect endpoints on a network. And the last one is the physical layer. This is where you then convert all the packets, the frames, into bits, ones and zeros, so that you can pass them through the wire as electrical signals. So those are the three layers, the first three layers of the OSI. Which protocols do we use to connect our devices? Which protocols do we use to connect our devices? Okay, so I just want to make sure that I understand this question correctly. So I'm going to make an assumption. Are you talking about the routers on your network? Okay, I want you to answer the question with layer 3 in mind. Okay, so if you're talking about layer 3 devices, then the primary protocol that you're going to be running is IP, Internet Protocol. What is a VPN? VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. VPNs allow us to create a virtual private tunnel through an untrusted network such as the internet. And using algorithms, we are able to encrypt that traffic so that if anyone was to intercept it, they will not be able to see the contents of that traffic. At AWS, we offer a wide range of services. Can you just tell me a few of the services that we offer? So I'm going to be focusing on two services. The first one is something known as EC2. I'm sure you're familiar with the term. EC2 is your compute capacity in an AWS perspective, and this is where you run your servers as EC2 instances. And the second service that you offer is Route 53, which is your DNS service that you provide for cloud infrastructure in the AWS space. Can you tell me of a challenge that you faced and what was so challenging about that experience? Like I mentioned to you earlier on, when I started as a PC technician. And as I grew in experience, my boss decided to take me for network training. And at one point, I was deployed at a customer site where I needed to install a new network. Now, unfortunately, I was the only technician who was deployed on that particular site. And the process of installing that network involved pulling cables through the ceiling, dropping them at the corner of each office, putting conduit to run the cables, and at the end, I had to crimp the cables and put RJ45 connectors, use a cable tester to be able to test. Now, what was so challenging about that whole process? It was quite tedious because, for every cable run, I had to climb in the ceiling, drill a hole in the ceiling, drop the cable, come down, pull it down, put it in trunking, and then run the cable, patch it into a junction box, and then from the junction box, then create a fly lead from scratch because none were purchased. It would have been better for that task to be done by two people, and that's what I found challenging. And how did you resolve this particular challenge? Well, there wasn't much to resolve in this case. I just had to soldier on and get the work done. So I kind of found a method where I went around drilling the holes and just running the cables. And then after coming down on the ground, I'll just pull all the cables in the different offices. So by coming up with a system, it helped to be able to improve my efficiency. And it took me about 5 days to terminate about 40 ports on that network. And man, that was the most difficult network that I've ever configured, having configured it by myself. But for someone who was starting, their career in networking, I was able to be exposed to multiple facets. I was able to learn and master crimping because I made so many fly leads. I learned how to punch cables in a junction box. I also learned how to tidy cables using trunking. And whilst I was running the cables in the ceiling, I was able to kind of like pull them in a way that is probably, uniform and neat. And the most important of them all, being able to use a cable tester to verify that my cables were basically working. So it was a challenging experience, but at the same time, it was a very good, rewarding learning experience because I learned quite a lot, and I'm sure I'll be able to hold on to those lessons for the future. So you applied for this position. What interests you with AWS? Well, why AWS? There are not so many places that you can work in the entire world that would exceed the capacity and the technology that you find at AWS. So I'm excited for two reasons. Number one, whilst this is an entry-level position, I see future growth and potential to grow my career in working for Amazon. I can see myself working for Amazon for the next 15 to 20 years. And the last question, what is the root user in a Linux operating system? The root user for Linux is sudo. Okay, so those are all the questions that we had in this interview. Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to interview me. I guess from my end, just wanted to know, when are you looking to have someone starting for this position? So in this part, I'm going to give you my analysis of the questions that were asked in the interview. So I remember I was telling my student, these questions seem pretty basic, but they're very significant technical questions. And from the technical questions that were asked, they were quite broad, sometimes pretty random, but they covered quite a significant level of depth and knowledge in being able to sift someone who has an understanding and someone who does not have an understanding. So I'm probably just going to walk through, how I think I responded to the question and what was the expectation of the interviewer in asking that question. What answer were they expecting? So I'm probably going to go down the questions in that order to be able to then, get feedback. So the first question, I'm not going to focus more on the question about tell me about yourself. That's a very important question, and you need to be able to prepare. Just have a good summary about what people need to know about you. What I liked about the answer that I gave was it helped the interviewer gain perspective about my experience and my knowledge. Right, so I started by saying that I did A+. So that then reinforced that I understand how PCs work. And in that same statement, I said I finished my A+ probably 6 to 12 months back. So I'm a newbie. I'm not very experienced. And then I also then emphasized that whilst I'm working for a small IT company, the owner recognized that I had some skill set, and they decided to send me for Network Plus training so that I can get networking skills. So then that demonstrates that not only am I a good employee because I got promoted and I was taken for training because they saw some value and potential in me. So I'm communicating all these things without necessarily, forcing myself on someone, but I'm just planting seeds in someone's head, of what they know about me. So I felt like, yeah, that's a pretty decent introduction. And I always encourage people, have a story tell me about yourself. Have a story that is prepared. Don't stammer, just get to the point and tell the interviewer something short and sweet about yourself, but make sure that there's something important and significant to learn in that whole process. All right, so let's go to the first question. What is dark fiber? Now, I stammered on this question. And to be very frank, I chose not to practice. When I saw these questions, I wanted to be as raw as possible. So I did not practice. And I answered questions based on the knowledge that I thought I had at that particular time. So, I mean, dark fiber can't explain it from a textbook answer, but I gave an example, that probably puts someone to understand what dark fiber is. So the answer was a bit offish, but it was in the right path. So from an interviewer perspective, I think what I'm keen in knowing, if I was to ask you this question, is do you understand what dark fiber is? Not necessarily the technical terms, but just at which point do you use dark fiber? And throwing in an example never hurts. Question number 2, what might be the issue if two routers are connected and don't have a link? So this question I was trying to test, what's your troubleshooting process? Two routers are not talking, they are not working, but they are connected. So the physical link is okay. What might be the issue? And one of the key concepts that we're looking for is that routers by default, the interfaces are shut down. So if you don't unshut a router interface, it's never going to come up. So there's a high possibility that the interfaces for the router were shut down. And I think my answer on that question was pretty spot on, probably lined up with what the interviewer was asking. So I hope you kind of seeing a pattern, as we go through, as we analyze this interview. Obviously, it's going to be a bit flawed because I'm analyzing my own interview, trying to do a role play between two sides. But when I do a role play with someone on the other side of the camera or someone physical sitting with me, then this will probably make more sense. But just work with me as we go through. The third question was, what is routing and switching? The two things that an interviewer is probably looking for in that is routers operate on the layer 3 of the OSI, switches operate on layer 2, routers use IP addressing, switches use MAC addresses. Right. If you're able to nail either of these 4, then you've got a decent understanding. And I feel like I did a very good job on that particular question. The answer was pretty succinct and covered these 4 aspects that I basically mentioned. The fourth question was, describe the first 3 layers of the OSI model. And I could take it from the top or from the bottom. I chose coming from the bottom, which is the physical, the data link, and the routing, layer 3. Layer 2, layer 3, layer 1. Once again, layer 3, routers, IP addressing. Layer 2, switches, MAC addresses. And layer 1, you're dealing with the physical cabling and you're dealing with bits, 1s and 0s. Anything hovering around those 6 concepts would show that you have a very good understanding. I could have taken the top and spoken about the application, the presentation, and the session layer, but I chose the bottom 3 of the OSI. Which protocols do we use to connect our devices? Now, this question wasn't clear, and sometimes when you get questions that are not clear, it's always important for you to ask. Don't make assumptions. The interviewer might be throwing those questions intentionally because they want to see if you're paying attention, or sometimes it's just a genuine omission or error. So always important to ask questions, and when you ask questions, you get much better clarity and you're able to answer the question in a much better way. So don't be afraid to ask questions in the interview. If you're not so sure, and if you feel like you're not understanding the question, just raise up your hand. It's like, hey, I don't think I understand the question. Or can you expand the question? And in my answer, I asked for further information so that I could gain more context. And as I gained more context, I was then able to give the right answer of what they were looking for. What is a VPN? Once again, another technical question. It's either you know or you don't know. In simple terms, VPN is a virtual private network, which is a virtual tunnel that you use to protect traffic from source to destination over an untrusted network such as the internet? That's the answer that someone will be looking for, and that's the answer that I basically gave. So those two went hand in hand. What services does AWS offer? Now, this is a broad question. There's so many services that you can tackle. In such a scenario, I always advise people, pick 2 services offered by the particular vendor and master those questions. Now, my answering was fair, not the best, not the most perfect. The reason being that I was a bit stumbling about the services that they offer, even though I came through to explain, EC2 and Route 53. But it would be good for you to have, a good story on the services that are offered by the vendor so that you can easily answer without the need to stammer. Tell me about a challenge that you've faced. Now, this is an open-ended question. So many things that you can be able to bring through. Now, I'm going to be talking about the recommended approach. When you're asked questions in interviews, there is something known as the STAR technique. The STAR technique says, talk about a situation, right? What happened? What was the task at hand? What was the action that was taken? And what was the result? So yes, you're talking about the most difficult challenge that you faced. But if you got structure to that story, it's not going to be a story about your challenge that you faced, but it's going to be a story that adds value to the interview that you're having. So if you look at my story, I spoke about the situation. What was the situation? I was asked to go and set up a network for a small business. And what was the task? The task was to set up the entire network, and I was left to do that as one individual person. And this is a true story. This story happened at the beginning of my career, actually, when I was starting my journey, not even networking, but in IT. I was sent at a client site to install a network. And what I basically articulated is what actually transpired. So the task was to install the network. The action, I had to climb the ceiling, pull the cables, come down, trunk the cables, make sure that they were tidy, connect them to a junction box. And then after that, I had to create fly leads to then connect the junction box to the device that was connecting to the network. So I dealt with the action, I also dealt with the result. In the end, the network was successfully installed. So whilst I was talking about the most challenging process, I was also emphasizing the skills that I acquired in that whole process that would then add value to the job that I'm interviewing for. So be mindful of the STAR technique, brilliant technique. Situation, what's the situation? What's the task? What is the action? And what was the result? And what was your responsibility in the implementation of that particular result? How did I resolve? I think I highlighted how I resolved. I mean, these are open-ended questions, nothing technical. So you got leeway on how you're going to answer it. What are your interests working at AWS? Once again, always have a very good story. If you're going for an interview, why you want to work for that organization. What are you looking for? What are the career paths? How long do you see yourself? So I threw in terms like, I see myself being with AWS for the next 15, 20 years. So indirectly, I'm simply saying, I'm not in for the short run, I'm in for the long run. I see longevity in this organization, and that could work towards positivity towards you as a candidate. And I thought I did a very good job in answering that question. But you let me know in the comments what you think. Did I do a good job? Or it was just probably, fishy, fluffy. I'm going to put the questions. I'm probably going to put a link where you can download the questions from some Google Drive, and you can go and practice from home. What is the difference between single and multi-mode? Now we're back to technical questions. So the key thing, single mode, one strand of light, multi-mode, multiple strands of light, and single mode cables are longer than multi-mode cables. Any of those four lets you know that you understand what is the difference between single mode and multi-mode. What type of tool is used to test fiber cables? Now, this one you probably realize I fumbled with this question. And the reason why I fumbled is that, to be honest, I don't remember the name of the tool. I'm still trying to remember in my mind right now. But if you noticed, when I answered the question, I said, the name is evading me, but I've used the tool before. And then I explained how the tool works. So sometimes it's good to, if something has come out of your mind, I mean, it's an interview, you're in a pressure situation, sometimes you forget certain things, just be open. I can't remember, it's not coming to mind. When it comes back to mind, I'll let you know. And then you can move on to the next thing. And then the last two, what command is used to shut down a port on a Cisco device? The command is shut down. On a Juniper device might be different, on a Fortinet might be different. I just picked a vendor that I know, and there's nothing wrong with picking a vendor and being able to give the correct answer. And the last one is, what is the root user for Linux? And the answer was sudo. I have to check this up. I'm not so sure if it's correct, but something tells me that it's correct. I mean, once again, that's my understanding. I could be wrong, but that was the entire interview. So what was my take on the interview? Pretty technical, and with these technical questions, as someone who has sat on both sides of the table, on the table where I'm being interviewed and also on the other side of the table when I'm doing the interviewing, such questions can easily sift people that are not knowledgeable. Because if I ask you about dark fiber, if you've never dealt with dark fiber at all, you'll have no clue. It's asked, question number 2 was asking about troubleshooting steps if two routers not talking together. Question number 3 was routing and switching. What's the difference between the two concepts? And once again, if you have not studied and you have not been in the industry, then some of these questions would probably fly over. And the more the questions you can't answer, the more the red flags. Remember, I said at the beginning, the challenge with technical questions is that it's an either or. It's binary. It's A or B. There's no middle ground. And that creates a danger. And now this is me basically giving advice. When you get a question and you don't know the answer, be honest and say, I haven't read on this topic in a bit, and I'm not so sure what XYZ might be. People appreciate honesty. And it's not a crime not to know. It's not a crime not to remember. However, the challenge comes in when you start rambling. And the more you talk, the more you're digging your grave. Because the more you talk, the more you expose yourself that you are not familiar with the particular technology. Now, it's okay when it's 1 or 2 questions. When that starts creeping to about 50% of the interview questions, then you now start playing in not so good territory. So just be mindful as you are going through your interview process. But I thoroughly enjoyed the interview, and this is practical experience in interviewing. These are questions that were asked in a live interview 2 days ago. Yes, 2 days ago. Yesterday actually, because I had a chat with my student about yesterday, about the interview. So if you're going to be going on the market looking for a job, these are the questions that you're likely going to encounter, and you can practice. The beauty about this is you can practice. You can practice to tell your story. You can practice how to answer obvious questions like, tell me about your challenges. How did you overcome? That put together with, technical questions that you might not be able to answer clearly, at least someone will have a very good picture of you as a person and what you are capable of. So if you've made it to the end of this video, I want to take this time to say thank you. I hope you found value in this video. I don't know how many times I speak to people, who are struggling with interviews. I know this video is a bit long, probably the longest that I've done, but I felt that for us to do justice to this topic, we needed to break it down in these sections and be able to kind of analyze the interview process. I know it might not have been 100%, but I'm sure you probably learned what not to do in an interview and probably what to do in an interview. So now I'm going to make a plea. Now, to make this more engaging, more exciting, if you feel that you are ready with your interviewing skills and you want to have a mock interview where I'll ask you questions, you answer, and I'll give you feedback at the end, please send me an email. And my email address is Tinei, Tinei, at networkhustle.com. Send me an email on Tinei at networkhustle.com. I'm probably going to put my email in the show notes. Send me an email, put a title, interview roleplay, and we can schedule a Zoom session where I will interview you, I'll record with your consent, and we can be able to put it online. I guess the key benefit is to be able to have a real life example of an interview process, but also me being able to give you feedback that could not only help you, but also help our viewers in our community. So once again, guys, tell me, what do you think about this video? This is the first time I'm doing one of these. So your feedback is going to be very important. So let me know in the comment section, or just, hit the thumbs up button, just to let me know that, you resonated with this content and you found benefit and value. And it won't help to leave a comment. It'll probably help us with the algorithm and make sure that this video makes it to everyone. It is my desire that anyone who's starting a career in networking or in IT gets to see this interview, because this is real world experience. This is what you're going to encounter when you go through for interviews. And the more flexible and the more comfortable you are, the better. I hope at some point I'll have a role play where someone will ask me questions and throw as many questions as possible. And as I answer, I'll be able to showcase flexibility. And sometimes you need to just think on the spot, because you're never going to have all the answers. So my plan is, this role play was a network technician role. We're probably going to do one for help desk. We're going to do one for, entry-level security SOC analyst. We're going to do one for a junior network engineer. And then we're going to be able to see what kind of questions you will encounter in these different interviews and how best you're able to answer those questions and hopefully get the job at the end of the line. The most important part is to get the job. Get the job, get the money, get the money. So yes, once again, man, thank you for watching. Thank you for making this. Thank you for making it this far. This was a long video, but I hope that you found value and you will find value in this video. So let's make this video go viral. Hit the like button, comment, share it, and let everyone else get to find out about it. So once again, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.